Ever heard of the cowboy Robert Cox and his unexpected encounter at a saloon? It was an ordinary night. The saloon was alive with the usual chatter, laughter, and clinking of glasses. Suddenly, a dispute broke out between two men, each claiming the affection of a woman named Martha Williams. The argument escalated quickly, turning into a full-blown brawl. In the midst of the chaos, a cowboy named Robert Cox, who was quietly enjoying his drink at the bar, was caught off guard and kicked by one of the brawlers. Robert, a man of few words but full of action, decided to intervene. With a swift movement, he stood up, dusted himself off, and bravely tried to put an end to the ruckus. However, the two men, fueled by their egos and the liquid courage flowing through their veins, teamed up against Robert. Little did they know, they had just poked the bear. Robert, with his quick reflexes and strong fists, managed to overthrow the two men, leaving them sprawled on the saloon floor. The crowd watched in awe as the lone cowboy defeated the brawlers single-handedly. After the dust had settled, Robert, unfazed and composed, returned to his drink, finishing it in one final gulp. He then stood up, tipped his hat to the crowd, and made his way towards the exit. The saloon fell silent, the patrons looking on in admiration and respect. Then, a rustle came from the crowd. Martha, the woman at the center of the brawl, had decided to follow Robert. As he mounted his horse, she called out to him. The cowboy paused, turned, and waited patiently as Martha approached. "What do you want?" he asked, to which she replied, "I want to go with you." And that's how Robert Cox, a lone cowboy, and Martha Williams, a woman caught in a brawl, crossed paths. Their story, however, was just beginning. Their subsequent adventures would lead them on a journey that would test their resilience, courage, and the strength of their newfound companionship. So what happens when a cowboy and a woman he just met decide to venture out west? Imagine the scene. A rugged cowboy named Robert Cox and a spirited woman named Martha Williams galloping away from the confines of Sedalia, Missouri. Their destination? The vast and untamed lands of the West. They ride for hours, their horses kicking up dust under the midday sun. As the sky begins to blush with the colors of the setting sun, they decide to set up camp for the night. Beneath the starlit sky, Robert kindles a fire, its glow casting dancing shadows on their faces. The air fills with the smell of beans simmering over the open fire, a simple meal, yet fills their stomachs and warms their spirits. As they eat their modest dinner of beans and bread, they share stories, laughter echoing into the night. As the temperature drops, Martha finds comfort in the warmth of Robert's presence, their bodies huddled together against the cold. The next morning, they break camp after a strong coffee, brewed cowboy style, over the remains of the dying fire. The journey westward continues, their bond growing stronger with every passing mile. The landscape changes, from the rolling plains to the rugged terrain of the West. They cross babbling streams and towering mountains, their spirits undeterred by the challenges of the journey. One day, they come across a stream that sparkles under the sun, hinting at the possibility of gold. Robert, always the adventurer, decides to try his luck at panning. Martha, ever supportive, waits patiently by his side, her eyes filled with hope and anticipation. As the sun begins to set, they make their camp by the stream, the sound of running water a soothing lullaby. The days turn into weeks, the weeks into months, their journey becoming a shared adventure, their bond deepening with each passing day. The journey was just the beginning of their adventure. The journey west led them to a tranquil stream, a perfect place to settle down. But how did they make a life there? With the stream's gentle whispering as their background music, Robert and Martha began building their new life. Robert, with his cowboy resilience and practical skills, started by cutting down the surrounding trees. His deft hands, hardened by years of cowboy living, maneuvered the axe with ease, each swing echoing in the stillness around them. As the trees fell, Robert shaped them into logs, stacking them one on top of the other, painstakingly crafting a sturdy log home. The structure, though simple, was a testament to Robert's hard work and determination. Every log, every nail, every joint was a piece of Robert's resolve, a symbol of their new beginning. But their life by the stream was not just about building a home. Robert ventured into the wilderness, hunting for rabbits, squirrels, and deer. His eagle-like eyes scanned the area, his steady hands always ready with his trusted rifle. His hunting trips not only provided them with food, but also materials for trade. In the meantime, Martha took charge of the traps Robert set around their home. Her delicate yet firm hands checked on the traps, ensuring their security and functionality. She also spent her days gathering wild fruits, her basket filling with nature's bounty. Life by the stream also brought them an unexpected gift: gold. Robert, with his cowboy curiosity and adventurous spirit, started panning for gold in the stream. The glimmering specks brought not just a glint in their eyes, but also a means to sustain their life in the wilderness. Robert often rode to a nearby town called Warrensburg, trading the gold for groceries and whiskey, ensuring their pantry was always stocked. Life by the stream was a blend of nature's tranquility and the thrill of frontier life. Every sunrise brought new challenges, every sunset marked another day of their survival, and every night under the stars was a celebration of their enduring spirit. Life by the stream was simple, but fulfilling. A visit to a nearby town called Warrensburg brought an unexpected job offer for Robert. The town, with its dusty streets and wooden buildings, was a typical frontier settlement. It was here that Robert's path crossed with the town's sheriff, a grizzled man with a star pinned to his chest. As Robert traded his hard-earned gold for groceries and whiskey, the sheriff approached him. Their conversation was casual at first, discussing the weather and the town's affairs. But then, the sheriff's tone grew serious. He told Robert about the town's problem with unruly cowboys who were making life difficult for the townsfolk. The sheriff had a proposition for Robert. He needed a man like him, someone who could handle himself in a fight, someone who could restore law and order. He offered Robert a job as a bounty hunter. It was an unexpected offer, but Robert was intrigued. The sheriff could see it in his eyes. He knew Robert was the right man for the job. Robert considered the offer. He thought about the peaceful life he had by the stream, panning for gold, hunting for food, and living with Martha. But he also thought about the thrill of a new challenge, the chance to make a difference in a town plagued by lawlessness. After a moment of thought, he made his decision. He accepted the sheriff's offer. But Robert was not one to abandon his dreams. He decided he would continue panning for gold, trading it for necessities in town. He would balance his life between the peaceful solitude of the stream and the chaotic challenge of being a bounty hunter in Warrensburg. It was a strange combination, but Robert was a unique man, capable of juggling both. Robert's life was about to take a thrilling turn. He was about to become a bounty hunter, a guardian of law and order. He was prepared for the challenges that lay ahead, ready to face them head-on. Little did he know that his decision would lead him to an adventure he never could have imagined. A poker game at a bar may seem harmless, but not when you're playing with the notorious cowboys of Warrensburg. Picture this: Robert Cox, our rugged cowboy protagonist, finds himself face to face with four of the most infamous troublemakers in town. Jim, the ringleader, with his sidekicks Fred, Joe, and Alex, all known for their bullying ways and quick tempers. They invite Robert to join them for a friendly game of poker, a proposal that carries an unspoken challenge. They sit around a worn wooden table, the air thick with tension and the smell of stale beer. The cards are dealt, and the game begins. It's a high-stakes match, with every hand raising the pot higher and higher. The cowboys try to intimidate Robert, their smirks revealing teeth stained from tobacco and whiskey. But Robert remains calm and collected, his poker face as unreadable as a cloudless sky. The game goes on for 2 grueling hours, the cowboys' laughter and bravado slowly fading as Robert steadily rakes in the chips. He plays with a cool head and a keen eye, his every move calculated and precise. It's clear that he's not a man to be trifled with, especially when it comes to poker. In the end, Robert beats them all, his final hand a royal flush that leaves the cowboys speechless. He stands, collects his winnings, and leaves the bar, $1,000 richer. The cowboys watch him go, their eyes burning with a mix of disbelief and resentment. Robert rides home, the weight of his victory and the cash in his pocket a pleasant burden. He arrives to a warm meal prepared by Martha, and they share a peaceful evening, oblivious to the storm brewing in the distance. Little did Robert know, his victory at the poker table was going to have consequences. But for now, he savors his triumph. A lone cowboy who bested the notorious cowboys of Warrensburg in their own game. A peaceful day at the log home was disrupted when the defeated cowboys decided to pay Robert a visit. The tranquility of the afternoon was shattered by the thunderous galloping of horses. The notorious cowboys from the Saloon, led by their leader Jim, had found their way to Robert and Martha's serene haven. Martha, busy tending to her garden, was caught off guard as the men approached, their intentions as clear as the malice in their eyes. The cowboys, still stinging from their defeat at the poker table, were out for revenge. Their target? Robert Cox, the man who had bested them all. However, Robert, ever the vigilant cowboy, was not far away. Emerging from the woods, he spotted the intruders. His hand instinctively moved to the gun at his side, his eyes narrowing at the sight of Martha in potential danger. Without missing a beat, Robert fired a shot into the air. The loud crack echoed through the trees, causing the men to halt in their tracks. Martha, startled but unharmed, took the opportunity to move away from the men, putting some distance between them and herself. Robert's voice, as steady as his aim, questioned the men, asking them what they wanted. Their response was not with words, but with aggression. They lunged at Robert, their intentions clear, but Robert was ready. He engaged the cowboys, deftly handling each one with the same ease he had shown in the saloon. Having incapacitated the cowboys, Robert made a decision. He would not let this transgression go unpunished. He arrested the men, tying their hands and preparing to take them to Warrensburg. The cowboys, once the terror of the town, were now in the hands of the town's new bounty hunter. The attack was just a taste of the challenges Robert was about to face. But Robert Cox was not a man to be easily deterred. He was prepared to face whatever came his way, ready to protect his home, his life, and the woman he cared for. Back in Warrensburg, the sheriff had some unsettling news for Robert. The sheriff, a man of few words but many experiences, had been keeping a close eye on the comings and goings of the town. He'd spotted a couple of unfamiliar faces skulking in the shadows, faces that didn't bode well for the peace of the town. "Robert," the sheriff began, "there's trouble brewing. A couple of robbers have been seen in the area. Word is they're planning something big." His voice was grave, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. "The money train, Robert, the one that comes every Monday. There's talk that these robbers are planning to hit it." The sheriff's eyes met Robert's, a silent plea for help. The money train was vital to the town's economy. Its loss would hit the people of Warrensburg hard. Robert, a man of action, didn't hesitate. He'd seen the hardships of life out west, the struggle to survive, to carve out a living from the harsh, unforgiving landscape. He knew what it meant to the town to lose that money. "I'll find their hideout, Sheriff. I'll bring them in." The sheriff's relief was palpable. He knew Robert was a man of his word. If he said he'd stop the robbers, he would. "Thank you, Robert. I knew I could count on you." Robert nodded, his mind already turning to the task at hand. He'd need to keep a low profile to watch the town and its people carefully. He'd need to find these robbers before they struck. And he'd need to be ready to face whatever they threw at him. As he left the sheriff's office, Robert felt the weight of his new responsibility. He was no longer just a cowboy or a gold panner. He was now the town's protector, its guardian against the threats of the Wild West. But he was ready. He would do whatever it took to keep Warrensburg and its people safe. With the news of the robbers, Robert was about to venture into a dangerous mission. Two unfamiliar faces rode into town, their intentions unknown. As the dust settled behind their horses, the two men dismounted and sauntered into the saloon. Their names? Bud Spencer and Terence Hill. From underneath their wide-brimmed hats, their eyes surveyed the room, finally landing on Robert Cox, our local hero and newly appointed bounty hunter. The pair approached Robert, their boots echoing on the wooden floor. Bud, the taller of the two, was the first to speak. His voice, deep and smooth, resonated through the saloon as he introduced himself and his companion. Robert, ever the observer, noted their confident demeanor and the subtle hint of an Italian accent. Bud and Terence were not your typical cowboys. They had a dream, a plan that was far from common around these parts. They wanted to start a casino. Even the idea of it sparked curiosity among the townsfolk. A casino could bring prosperity, but it could also invite trouble. Robert listened, his expression unreadable, as Bud and Terence painted a picture of their vision. But that wasn't all. The ambitious duo also intended to set up a wholesale operation, aiming to sell everything from provisions to apparel right here in town. Their proposition was intriguing, and it was clear that they had the resources and the determination to make it a reality. Robert kept his reservations to himself, choosing instead to engage them in conversation. As the night wore on, Robert found himself in a precarious situation. On one hand, he had a train robbery to prevent. On the other, he had to keep a close eye on Bud and Terence. Their arrival had stirred the town, and Robert knew he had to tread carefully. Despite the uncertainty, Robert welcomed the challenge. He understood that the West was ever-changing, and he was ready to adapt. But one thing was clear to Robert. With new faces in town and a robbery to prevent, he certainly had his hands full. With the money train's arrival imminent, Robert needed a plan. He knew he had to outsmart the robbers, Bud Spencer and Terence Hill, who had shown a keen interest in the town's affairs. They had come to town under the pretense of starting a casino and a wholesale business. But Robert was not fooled. He had seen enough in his life to read between the lines, and he sensed the danger they posed. Robert decided to play it cool, to blend in and observe. He frequented the saloon, listening to the chatter, the rumors, the stories, all the while keeping a close eye on Bud and Terence. He watched their habits, their interactions, their routines. He watched them closely, trying to discern any giveaways, any hint of their true intentions. Meanwhile, Martha was doing her part from the Wagon Wheel Inn. She had checked in for the week, a strategic move that positioned her perfectly to keep an eye on the town's activities. From her vantage point, she could see the comings and goings, the ebb and flow of the town's life. She watched, she listened, and she relayed everything to Robert. Every piece of information, no matter how trivial it seemed, could be a clue, a piece of the puzzle. Robert's plan also included preparations for a possible confrontation. He kept his trusty Colt revolver cleaned and loaded. He made sure his horse was well fed and rested, ready for a quick getaway if needed. He practiced his shooting, his aim, his speed. He knew that when the time came, he would have to be faster, sharper, better. But above all, Robert's plan was built on patience and stealth. He knew he had to wait for the right moment, to strike when they least expected it. He knew he had to be a shadow, unseen and unheard until it was too late for them. With a plan in place, Robert was ready to face whatever came his way. He was ready to protect his town, his home, his Martha. He was ready to be the hero they needed. And so, with a steely resolve and a heart full of courage, he waited for the arrival of the money train.